Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sunday School with Miss Wesley. I am your host, Miss Wesley. Today we have another exciting lesson in our special edition series, Fighting with God. And today we will be asking an important question. If I put on these glasses, will I be able to see things that are invisible to the naked eye? And of course, the answer is no. Hello guys, I'm glad you could join us in our special edition series. This is episode 3 in our special edition series. Today, like I just pointed out, we will be learning about things that we cannot see. Well, in particular, a story about an army that was invisible to the naked eye. Now, as I pointed out, these glasses will not make things that are invisible become visible. If I had a magnifying glass, as we know, it makes things that generally we cannot see bigger. But that still doesn't make things that are invisible become invisible. And same can be said for a microscope. A microscope can see things at a microscopic level, hence the name a microscope. It can make things that are generally so small and tiny and invisible, but in reality, these things are always there. And with a microscope, it just makes things bigger so that you can see it. However, I'm not referring to that. I am talking about things actually invisible. Now, this story is another story about Elisha. He has a lot of stories. But this one is about, like I said, an invisible army. So, it takes place in 2 Kings. I forget the chapter. But it takes place in 2 Kings. There's 2 Kings. There's 1 and then there's 2. And this takes place in 2. So, Elisha had just gotten a axe head out of a river by making it float to the top. That's another story. We'll do that one eventually. I'm going to have to do a series on Elisha because he is a pretty cool dude. I mean, he does like superhuman stuff because he is has superhuman powers. But let's go to this story, okay? So, the king of Syria at that time had decided that he wanted to war with Israel. So, the king of Israel is out, and the king of Syria decides to set traps for this king, for the king of Israel. How easy how much easier would it to be for someone just to take out the leader of a country and then take over than it would be for to start an entire war. And this is what the king of Syria thought. So he was planning on setting ambushes out for the king of Israel. And every time the king of Syria would set one of these up, Elisha would see him and stop the king of Israel from going there. So the king of Syria thought that he had a spy among his servants. So one day he goes and questions his servants and says, "Who is the spy among us? Who is not loyal to the king?" And one of the servants spoke up, "None here is disloyal. It is Elisha who is hearing the whispers, even and your secrets, even the ones that you speak silently in your bedchamber." So the king of Syria says to his men, "Go and spy, or go see where Elisha is." And one of the servants says, "We know where he is. He's in Dothan." So the king decides to set a trap. Well, not a trap. The king decides to send parties of soldiers after Elisha and his servant. Elisha never travels alone. Well, I think he traveled once. Anyways, so Elisha's servant and Elisha realized that the city of Dothan, where they were staying, had been surrounded. And his servant goes, "What are we going to do?" And Elisha says, "Fear not, for those that are with us are more than what is with them." Oh, more than them. You know, how many they were. He goes, and then he prays to God and says, "God, my Father, please open the eyes of my servant that he may see." And when God opened the eyes of Elisha's servant, Elisha saw an army of fiery chariots and winged warriors that were set in them. And they covered the hills around the city. And so this army that outnumbered them did not even fight, because in that moment Elisha asked God to blind or smite the army. Smite is another word of hit or destroy or, smite. So Elisha asked God to smite the army with blindness. These men that were after Elisha. And so they were blind. And Elisha calls out and tells them, "The person you seek is not here." Elisha pulled a quick one. "He is in another place. Follow me and I will lead you to him." So Elisha, who was the man they were after, led the men to Somalia. Was it Somalia? No. Oh gosh. Oh well. Samaria. There it is. I got it. To Samaria, where the king of Israel was. And as they came before the king of Israel, Elisha asked God to lift the blindness from them. And they saw where they were at. And they were right in front of the king of Israel. And as he saw Elisha, he asked Elisha, should I kill them? Should I, in his words, smite them? And Elisha said, Why would you hurt the people that you have captured with a sword or with a bow? No. You need feed them bread and water and send them back to their master, the king. And so, which is a very forgiving way. So the king of Israel feeds these men and does what Elisha has requested or commanded, and releases the men, and they go back to their king. And there was no more parties sent, no more ambush raids. Not to say that there wasn't a war afterwards, but there wasn't no more trickery. This story is a very interesting way of looking at our lives. As we travel along, we often think that we are alone and our enemy outnumbers us. It's easy to feel like there's nothing we can do. Like the servant who questioned Elisha about what are we going to do? They outnumber us. It's easy to feel that way in our lives because Satan often bombards us with stuff, with things. It doesn't come as a trinkle. It usually hits us like a truck. It doesn't come like little this. It comes like and it feels like we're all alone and there's no one there and we feel trapped. And sometimes we have to pray that God open our eyes so we can see those fiery chariots that surround us. We are not alone at any point in our lives. When we become children of God, we come with superior fighting power. We come with chariots of fire and winged men, or with angels. And they are superior fighting power. They are capable of taking out our enemies. And sometimes everything works out and not a single word has to be said. Not a single hit has to be thrown. Sometimes God takes it out like that. This huge conflict or huge battle is taken out with just a snap of his fingers. And sometimes we actually have to go to war. Sometimes, though, we have to ask God to blind our enemy so he cannot see us. And Satan, he doesn't come alone. He comes in numbers. He likes using people. And like I've said before, he loves destroying homes and families, dividing people. Because if he can make us feel alone, like we have no power, he knows he can win. He loves to use our anxiety, our depression, our things that make us feel desolate. He likes to use that stuff to make it feel like he can conquer us, like he can destroy our lives. But we have more power. We have the superior fighting force of God behind us, and all it takes is prayer. There's never been a time God has ever left you. There's never been a time God has ever left me. He's always been there. Even when it feels like you are alone, there is an invisible fighting force there, fighting with you. Because when you're fighting with God, you do not fight alone. And that's why it's important to go to church as well, because you got that behind you. Because you know there is more than just you fighting. You got your brothers and sisters fighting with you too. So, and like I said, sometimes you gotta blind your enemy. And you gotta be willing to forgive your enemy. Because like I said, Satan likes using people. And the easiest way that Satan can conquer you is not through the war and the conquering. Through the battle. It is through your own mindset. Unforgiveness is the worst thing you can do, is not to forgive someone. Because it is not hurting them to hold a grudge. It is hurting you. The Bible says to forgive 7 times 70. That's a multiplication. It's 7 times 70. And this is for our minds. Because everything you thought yesterday, you're going to think today. And you have to remember, I forgave them. I forgive what happened. That is then, this is now. Satan can destroy us through our own minds. And that affects our relationships everywhere. And that is one of the ways he can conquer us. So when Elisha was asking the king of Israel to spare these men, he was asking for them to forgive these men. There's nothing wrong with forgiveness. There's nothing, and you are not alone. There's never one point in your life where you are alone. And you do have superior fighting power behind you. And I want you guys to know and remember that point is there is superior fighting power, not just with you, but in you. You are a child of the Most High God. There is no one higher than Him. And you have power within you. There is a strength inside of you. There is love and compassion in you. So do not be afraid when things come at you, when it seems everything is falling apart at once. Oftentimes they're falling into place. And when the enemy comes after you, when it feels like the dark spirits of the king of darkness is coming after you wholeheartedly, you are not alone. So I'm going to finish with our verse And then, because I didn't do it at the beginning. And tomorrow we'll be learning about a godly strategy. And so we'll be learning about Gideon. Pretty cool story of Gideon. Yeah. So, I'll do this first, and then we will say goodbye until tomorrow. Or until the next episode that you watch. Okay. Beloved, follow not that which is evil, but that which is good. He that doeth good is of God, but he that doeth evil hath not seen God. I love you guys. And God loves you. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. So remember, no matter where you are in this life, remember that you are loved. If you wish to continue following me, you can follow me on Facebook. You can check out all my other videos. And you can follow me on Instagram. And if I ever feel like it, I might get back on Twitter. I have a hard time posting stuff. I'm over the age of 30, you know. That was like a little bit before my time. Okay. Like I said, I love you guys. Goodbye.